All right, last and certainly not least, obviously, Wellington Sue. I'm going to have him talk about burnout is real and how do we prevent it.
Thanks a lot, Jay. My topic, it's a concept that when you're 30 years old, you don't really think about, but when you're 50, like I am, it's all around you. We know that burnout is a serious issue in physicians in general. Suicide rates are higher than general population, but it's an even bigger problem for those in this room because we work long hours, we have complex cases, there's litigation risk, there are physical demands, and it all adds up. We also live in this culture of stoicism where traditionally we don't really seek help for these issues. Now that is changing, but not changed all the way. This is supported by data. It's clear that over the past 10, 15 years, doctors are not as happy as they used to be. They're not as satisfied with their careers, and it explains why kids of physicians don't tend to do don't go into a medical career as much as they used to. And again, this is a fact. Now, if you look at spine surgeons at a cross-sectional survey using a very common metric for burnout called the Maslach Burnout Inventory, it doesn't matter if you live in the United States or Latin America or Europe, your prevalence of burnout is going to be over 30%. It's interesting that it's associated with younger age, but if you don't know it's coming, it can certainly creep up on you. This is coupled by the fact that the midlife crisis exists. So anyone who's 50 years old like I am, you're surrounded by your friends who are not in the medical career, by relatives, by colleagues who are sparked by the realization that their life is half over. You feel like your career reaches a plateau, there's nowhere to go, it's only downhill from here. It's a crisis that certainly exists. And very well-known studies indicate that this U-shaped happiness curve exists so that when you're around 50 years old, no matter if you're in the happiest country or the least happiest country, at around this age, you will be the least happiest in your life. So I'm kind of looking forward to this kind of, going up even more. Now, for the surgeons, even more, it's highlighted for a number of reasons. You're a decade in your practice, your kids don't need you, you have definitely more stability, less uncertainty. There's less of this energy, like when you first start on your job, that kind of goes away a little bit. You're landlocked because your kids are going to school, so you can't really move them. Your level of proficiency is pretty good. Again, it's just becoming a little less interesting. You treat patients with pain. This is on a daily, on a weekly basis. You have physical wear and tear on your own. You can ignore your health. All of these issues sort of compound. And then you have a changing healthcare environment. So this is all coming to a head for not only for people who are my age, but spine surgeons in general. And so you have to recognize this. And so and then there are certainly things that we can do to try to prevent it. Why does it matter? Well, the surgeon suffers, your family suffers, but even more importantly, your patient suffers. So we're not a lot of us. There are not a lot of people in the world that do what we do. And when we have the privilege of doing that and we're not at our best, then that effect can be transmitted across many different ways. So I've come up with a 4-step prevention plan to try to recognize what we have here and try to prevent it from occurring in individuals in this room when you get to a certain point. The first is anticipation. No one would go into, or no one would oops, sorry. Can you play that for me? Thanks. Nobody would step onto a hot racetrack without knowing the nuances of the track itself, the obstacles involved, the twists and the turns, and the things that one needs to do in order to sort of navigate through life. But on the flip side, surgeons are not very good at playing this game of would you rather, meaning that if we don't really think about what is most important to us when it comes to a job. And I can speak to this because I train fellows, I've trained residents, and when I ask them what is most important in a job, these things commonly come up, which is really important. We want to be famous, we want to make money, we want to have good stability, but the question is, what if you can't have it all? If you can't have it all, I would submit that surgeons usually underestimate the importance of location, where you live, and the amount of autonomy that you have in your job. Now, location comes across in many different phases. The pace, whether it's urban or rural, the weather, your family. Are there people who can help your family, support your needs, the healthcare environment, diversity, political climate, access. All of these come into play, and I would argue that this trait of your job is probably best endured or allows you to endure other things that may not, work really well. This is a picture of a trip we took to Disney World about 10 years ago with some of my closest friends who I made after moving to Chicago. And all of these kids are like grown and in college and that sort of thing. And when you have that sort of environment, that location, then the things that come about that you may not be expecting or may not, may not be ready for, you'll endure. Similarly, if there's one constant thing in your career, that is change. And things change with your circumstances in life, your priorities. You heard, Dom talk about how, your family unit changes, your environment changes. And so the one trump card that you have to navigate this is autonomy. And so this will allow you to mitigate your, potential midlife crisis. And you are your best advocate. Only you know what is best for you. And if you choose a job that allows you to do that later on, then you're best equipped to deal with this. Sometimes it's hard to know that, when you enter a job, but this is definitely something you want to be thinking about in order to accommodate for the twists and turns that you may not foresee. I won't talk any more about mentorship because Dom did an excellent job, sort of addressing this, but what I would say is that, my presidential talk last year had to do with how mentees become mentors and how many of the qualities that you have as a mentee can be applied to mentors as well. And I've been blessed with some of the best mentors in my life. The reason I am where I am today is because of the people around me. Now, not everybody has that. And so that's where Lumbar Spine Research Society comes in. That's where our mentorship program that we sort of have instilled in this society can offer to others. And you never know when a nugget is gonna happen for you. Rick Fessler, who is a neurosurgeon who I respect greatly, and I never trained with him, but I remember him telling me very early in my career that his most memorable moments with his family were in the hot tub. And so there's like this captivated sort of place where your kids can't go anywhere, and you talk about things that you normally don't talk about. And sure enough, I built a hot tub, and now I have like some of the best memories I've had with all of my kids, in that realm. And so you never know when that's going to happen. So you gotta lean on those who care about you. You gotta challenge individual. The concept that you have fluid intelligence when you're young, and then crystallized intelligence when you're older. This type of mentorship will allow you to prevent your burnout. Collegiality. Ash gave a great talk on how when you're in private practice, you can have, kind of have academic type, concepts. But in academics, this is the lifeblood of our existence. This is why we go into academics. It's not only the great partners that I have to practice, but it's like going out on the town with Reha in Prague, or staying at Brandon Lawrence's house when you're in Grand Rounds, or being at Rick Sasso's garage, with people that that really care about each other. And this is the type of experience that you have to spend time with. You have to commit this. When we do this with all of our friends, we're taking away time from our family. But I think the older that I get, the more that I realize that if you can get everybody in one room and you can form these memories, that burnout will go away, and you won't really see that. My final point is what I call the happiness quotient. It's a pretty similar, or very simple formula, I would say, where the amount of time you spend things that you enjoy, minus the amount of time that are really painful, over this time really is how happy you're going to be. And so obviously this needs to be a positive number, and what makes everybody happy in this room is going to be different. But I think it's important to sort of recognize what is on one end for you and what's on the other end, because you're making these decisions on what to do that'll make you happy. Where everybody's in this room and successful, not only because we're intelligent and smart, but because we're diverse and we are really good at things outside of our job. And it's so common when we reach like an attending level and we become fathers and become husbands, that we sort of neglect that part of it. Like we are breadwinners, we have a lot more pressure, we have a lot more responsibility, but it's even more important in that time to sort of, keep your hobbies up or keep things that, make you happy, because if you're not happy, then nobody is around you and everybody would sort of suffer. And so there are only a certain number of hours in the day. And so I would argue that, most of the time we sort of think about these hours to developing the things that we want. But I would argue that it's even more important to spend this time to avoid the things that you don't want. So avoiding the 3Ds sometimes is unavoidable, but trying to avoid having this depressive state, keeping up with your mental health, doing things that are happy for you, seeking help when you need it. Concepts that we probably didn't think about, 10, 15 years ago, are really important. I'd be the first to sort of recognize and argue that having a marriage is a lot of time goes into that. You build your relationship over time. You change with the times. Your goals are reoriented, and divorce is not only emotionally taxing, but it's financially taxing. So spending time actively to try to avoid it can certainly affect this. And then finally, not to be morbid here, but the older you get, the more or the less your body responds to certain things. And so spending more time with your physical health, changing your diet, exercising, routine checkups, all of this becomes more important over time. And again, avoiding these things will help ensure that burnout doesn't get to you. So to conclude, you have to own who you are, know who you are, know that you may not change, but that if you know who you are, then the decisions you make will be much more fruitful for you. Command of your schedule. I can't emphasize this enough on how important it is, not only early in your career, but later. Knowing the goals of those around you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, I think really allows for a very fruitful environment for success. And then finally, using the resources to achieve those goals, which is different for everybody, but important to think about. Thank you.